All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hey, Soltan.
Hi.
Yeah, I trained in family medicine, and as early on as in my residency, I was already really getting into gender affirming care as more of let's say, a medical service delivery. So when we say gender affirming care, you mean a couple things, right? One is just a global way of caring for an individual who's transgender. So that can be, acknowledging them appropriately, using the name that they go by if it happens to be different from what's on their ID or the legal name, using pronouns which they go by. That general sense of having a compassionate and empathic care, regardless of what you're doing, whether it's blood pressure, diabetes, or HRT. Now, HRT, so it stands for hormone replacement therapy. Very common term we use to talk about prescribing medications, which most commonly are hormones, to affirm one's gender, so to bring them physically, emotionally in line with how they identify.
HRT isn't a part of the trans journey for every trans person, but for some people it is, and it doesn't validate a trans identity. There's no right dosage. It's really different for every person. Right now in the United States, there's a handful of LGBT care providers who are competent in gender affirming care. But if you're not fortunate enough to live in one of those cities that has one of these providers, it can be really difficult to navigate, to have access to a medical professional like Jerrica and our clinical team who really understand the nuance of those decision-making processes. And so before you even get there, a lot of what the trans community does is search for this information online and use the community, the trans community that exists, to ask questions.
We provide immediate access to gender affirming hormone therapy through the convenience of a smartphone, providing something that's safe, convenient, and very accessible, more accessible than most options in a brick and mortar setting.
We basically kind of piloted this about almost a year ago in July of last year. Talked to community members, we talked to stakeholders, we talked to our patients, and kept getting the feedback that this is desperately needed.
Moving to a new state, changing your work, losing your insurance coverage, all of those things create an enormous amount of pressure or tension around how you're going to continue HRT. And so, a service like Plume, which removes the connection, so to speak, between insurance, employment, and gender affirming care, I think is something that's really powerful for the trans community.
26% of trans people, when they do seek care in a physician's environment, in a doctor's office, are either discriminated against or refuse care based on their gender identity. Nearly 30% actually delay care entirely for fear of that discrimination. And of those that do manage to find a clinic where they're able to see a physician, many physicians are unfamiliar with gender affirming hormone therapy. In fact, 50% of the trans community states that they have trained their doctor how to care for them. So this landscape of access is so challenging.
We're doing an unprecedented thing in an unprecedented time. And in North Carolina, we're doing it in a precedented place. Having lived through HB2 myself in North Carolina as a trans person, I think I could underscore those statistics that Matthew put out there. I think the legacy of a bill like that looms large for the trans community. Seeking care, just being physically themselves anywhere, is a threat and a fear. We're super excited to bring gender affirming care home to our state.
It's really hard to underscore that significance of having a care team that's almost entirely trans. I mean, even just to have a company, right, where another person in the company you're working in is trans.
The community itself is incredibly powerful and incredibly well-connected, and has deserved care for a long time. And there's been an army of folks who have worked to do that. And we see ourselves in a line and sort of standing on the shoulders of giants and hoping to pass forward a torch, towards a world where gender affirming care is everywhere, at every healthcare facility. And I think that proving that out is what we're doing now.